Okay, in this lesson, we're going to learn about zero and negative exponents and how to simplify these. So first of all, in your notes, you need to write the zero rule, which algebraically is x to the 0 power equals 1. So this is the first rule. We're going to have several rules in the next several lessons. So it basically says that any number or expression with an exponent of 0 equals 1. But let's talk about why this is. So let's start with 2 to the 1, which we know. So we know 2 to the 1 is 2, 2 squared is 4, 2 to the third is 8, so we're just multiplying by 2. 2 to the fifth is 32, and 2 to the sixth is 64. All we're doing is times 2, times 2, times 2, times 2, and times 2. Now, to understand why 2 to the 0 is 1, I want us to go backward and ask ourselves, how are we going from 64 to 32? So this time we're saying 64 divided by 2 gives me 32. And 32 divided by 2 gives me 16. And 16 divided by 2 gives me 8. And 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. 4 divided by 2 gives me 2. And 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. So really, when you're looking at an expression that has a power of 0, it's really, if we were to quote unquote expand, you are simply dividing it by itself. So that's how we get 1. Now let's be certain about our negatives though, like we learned in the last lesson. So we have negative 2 to the 0. So the 0 is only applied to the 2. And then we have negative 2 raised to the 0. So both the 2 and the negative is raised to the power of 0. So in this example, we have negative 2 over 2. So that's going to give me negative 1. Where in this problem, we're having negative 2 divided by itself because the base is negative 2. And we get the positive 1. So be careful with when we have parentheses and when we're looking at negative numbers. Okay, pause the video and you try these 3. Okay, on the first one, our base is 9, so it's 9 divided by 9, which is 1. Number 2, our base is 9, and we have this understood negative, so it's negative 9 over 9. That gives me negative 1. And number 3, our base is negative 9, so we have negative 9 divided by negative 9, and that is positive 1. So notice the difference. Okay, now let's move on to negative exponents. So write this rule in your notebook. So this is when you have a negative exponent. Typically, you will never leave an exponent with a negative sign. So there's a way that we can remove the negative, and that's what we're going to learn here. So here's the rule. When you have a negative exponent, I'm not talking about a negative base, the exponent is negative. To remove the negative, you're going to move this whole factor to the opposite location. So it's starting out in the numerator, because there's like a understood 1 here, and you're going to flip it to the denominator, and when you move it, you remove the negative. So these two expressions are equivalent, but this is the one that's preferred because I have a positive exponent. So again, let's look at our pattern. So we said that 2 to the 0 is 1, and we said 2 to the 1 is 2, 2 to the 2 is 4, and 2 to the third is 8. Now, and we went backward and we divided by 2. Okay, so let's keep going. So 2 to the negative 1 will be our next power, and we're going to take 1 and we're going to divide it by 2. We're just going to keep the same pattern, dividing by our bases. When we get to negative exponents, it's about division, not multiplication. So we're going to get 1 divided by 2, or 1/2. Then we're going to have 2 to the negative 2. So we'll take this 1/2, we're going to divide it by 2. So let's just go down here. So we have 1/2 divided by 2 is really 1/2 times 1/2, because dividing by a number is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. So this gives us 1/4. So 2 to the negative 2 is simply 1 over 4. We can see that 2 squared is 4. But when we have 2 to the negative 2, we're going to make it a fraction. It's dividing. Now let's move on and do one more. 2 to the negative third. So we're going to take the 1/4. We're going to divide it by 2. So let's write it out. 1/4 divided by the base 2 is really 1/4 times 1/2, which gives us 1/8. So 2 to the negative third is 1/8. Now I want you to notice something. Look at these pairs, 1/2 and 2. We have 1/4 and 4. We have 1/8 and 8. Can you see that they're reciprocals of each other? So negative exponents just tell me I'm going to be dividing. I'm going to be reciprocating the factor. So let's simplify these three expressions. Okay, so 5 to the negative 2, we just learned that if we have a negative exponent, we need to reciprocate the factor. So we're going to move it to the denominator and make it positive. And then we have a 1 on top. Remember the next one, this time our negative exponent, the factor starts in the denominator. So we're going to flip it to the numerator and we're going to take off the negative. And then we have it times 1, but we don't need that. So 2 to the 4th is your final answer if we're just simplifying. I'm not evaluating right now. Now, when you have variables, just go through each factor. So I have 1, 2, 3 factors in this one term. So I'm going to make my division bar b to the negative 1. B to the negative 1 needs to be moved because we need to remove the negative. So I'm going to move it to the denominator. So I'm just going to go through each one of these. A squared is happy. It's positive. So we're going to keep it where it is. C to the negative third is not so happy. So he wants to move to the top and become positive. So here is your final result. Now you try these and when we come back, we'll work them out together. Okay, number 1, we have 1 over 9 squared. And if you want to go ahead and evaluate it, you can. You don't have to. This is fine for now. Number 2, we're going to flip 3 to the negative third to the top. Number 3, both of these have negatives, so they're both going to reciprocate. The 2 to the negative third is going to come to the bottom. 4 to the negative 1 is going to come to the top. And if we evaluate this, we get 4 over 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So we get 1/2 as a final answer. On number 4, g squared is staying where it is. K to the first is going to move to the denominator. And h to the negative 4th is going to move to the top. Number 5, y squared is fine. W to the negative 3 wants to move to the top. And x to the 4th wants to stay where it is. All positive exponents. You always want to have all positive exponents.